All right, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. It's interesting because over the course of when I started doing these podcasts remotely because the pandemic forced us to, I remember feeling like, okay, this is a temporary inconvenience, and I think that the guest on this episode was one of the first people I talked to in that format last year. And at the time, it seemed like, oh, this sucks, but at least soon we'll be able to meet people in person. And this is your second time on the show. We're talking about a totally different project, and we're still not able to actually be in the same room. So I'm glad to have you back on the show, of course. And I'm very interested in talking to you about what you've got going on now. But I think the best way to start all of this off is if you want to introduce yourself and maybe give a bit of background about what it is you're doing now musically.
Okay, well, my name is Mike. I recorded an album called Star Thistle, and I called the album The Best of Star Thistle, which is a bit like, sort of announcing your arrival upon the scene and then immediately announcing your retirement.
Right.
I previously have recorded music under the name Uncle Sinner, which is a sort of different project that is more about revising American traditional folk music, editing it, and going for a sort of dark folk blues feel. Whereas this project, Star Thistle, is more in the indie folk vein. It's just me stretching out more as a songwriter and breaking a little bit freer from those traditions, although of course they still continue to inform the music.
Well, and you still sound like you, but stylistically it's definitely different. Was this always intended to be a separate project, or when you were writing these songs, were they intended to be Uncle Sinner songs originally?
No, it was always supposed to be a separate project. In fact, when Uncle Sinner first started, like when I first started considering releasing music, I had, I think, 3 of the songs that are on this album, but most of them have been written in the last 10 years, and so I had more material to release as Uncle Sinner, and I had a sense that the two genres didn't necessarily gel that well. I mean, there are going to be people who like both, but there will be people who only sort of like the dark hell stomp of Uncle Sinner and can't for the life of them figure out why he's singing about his goddamn feelings, right?
Yeah. Where did the emotions come from? Except for sadness.
Yeah, like, and just fans leaving by the droves. I did actually sneak a couple of Star Thistle songs onto the last Uncle Sinner record. So like Into Grace was a banjo tune. It was a very personal song. And Our Little Things for Vic Chestnut. Those were both conceived to be for Star Thistle. I just sort of got impatient and decided to put them out to see if anyone would listen to them, and like the reviewers like them, but I mean those aren't the songs that get a lot of hits on Spotify.
Sure. Well, like you say, people want the dark sludgy stuff, right? They're looking for that kind of
yeah. And the people who want like indie folk, sort of more poetic lyrics, more obviously poetic lyrics,
sure,
they're not necessarily going to hear about Uncle Sinner. So I didn't want to alienate my Uncle Sinner fans, and I sort of wanted to tip people off that this was going to be a different sound, although, like you said, still sounding very much like myself. I mean, still, I can't do anything about my voice at this point. You're either going to like it, or you're going to kill every person in the room to get away from it.
Right. Well, at least this is maybe more. Maybe you'll be less murderous because the songs are maybe a little bit less. They're brighter. They're not as depressing, right? So, I mean, that murderous rage might be contained a little bit by people who don't like your voice.
I actually think that this album contains my most depressing song.
Really? Okay. Sonically, it's brighter, I guess.
Yeah. Sonically, it's brighter for sure. But there's a couple there on this album that are pretty fucking sad. But that's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, that's what you're being more emotional on the record. That's one of the emotions, right? Is you can't be all rainbows and sunshine.
Yeah, and I do try to sing differently sometimes. Like on some of the songs, I try and sing around my vocal damage, just try and like, try and get a balance between like the burr that wants to come out and the and like a softer sound that I can get if I'm sort of concentrating on it more.
Right. Well, that burr sound, it's very distinctive, right? I mean, you have like I said, you sound like you.
Yeah, you could call it a burr, you could call it a croak. I don't know. It's
Right. Is it difficult now that you have this record and you have this new persona, basically, a Star Thistle? Is it difficult sort of relaunching from scratch? Because I mean, like you said, you have built up an audience as Uncle Sinner. You have a few records out. You have a fan base, and this is basically a different name. You're sort of, it's like a whole new almost artist, right? So is it difficult to launch that, or are you hoping that some of the Uncle Sinner fans will pick up on the fact that it's you and sort of wander over into this indie folk sort of territory?
Yeah, it has been a bit difficult to launch. I'm really lucky to have between 12 and 24 Uncle Sinner fans, and they'll sort of they'll buy whatever I do
Right.
under any name. But in terms of like spreading the word to a larger audience, the Uncle Sinner songs that get the most hits are definitely the stompiest ones, right? I mean, I do put more melodic ones on there because that's what I want to hear.
Yeah.
Like, I want to hear a balance. But with Spotify, people just tend to make up playlists, and like, here's a playlist of like hell, death, stomp, and and that's what people hear. So it's yeah, I mean, not every Uncle Sinner fan is gonna like Star Thistle, and it's hard to get the word out. Like, we've done, me and Dylan, my son, have done a more targeted campaign this time in terms of like doing a proper one sheet press release with like links to all the songs, and I think I sent it to you, actually.
You did, yeah.
And all that. I mean, there hasn't been a lot of take up on it. And there's a site called Submit Hub where you pay money to see if someone wants to, like, it's like $1, right? But you pay $1 for them to listen to your song, and yeah, there's one blog, Adobe and Teardrops, who did a write up on one of the songs. But it's it's a lot of rejection, and a lot of it is just like, yeah, like, everyone has their own reasons for rejecting something. I mean, sometimes it's just like, yeah, the melody wasn't doing it for me, or it's like, yeah, something about your voice is like interesting, but I don't like it.
Yeah, sure. That's definitely a thing, right? Yeah, well, that's I imagine the pandemic's got to have something to do with it as well. Like, people are at home and they're being bombarded with music just from everywhere because everyone's just making it and they can't go anywhere with it, right?
Yeah, I suppose so.
So your timing is not great to launch this new sort of second career as an artist right in the middle of a global pandemic.
Or maybe it's the perfect timing, right? Like, maybe what I really needed was to finally release these personal songs so that they can truly fail. I mean, just to cut me down a little bit. No, but I mean, that's a joke. But
for sure, yeah.
When I was younger, like, if I had put out an album of really personal songs, and it failed to reach a larger audience, it probably would have hurt me more. I don't really expect much. I've sort of embraced that. I like what I do, and there's some people who like what I do, and a lot of people aren't going to like it, but that's all right. I mean, that's the way she goes.
Yeah. Well, once if things get better in terms of shows being able to happen, things like that, are you hoping to play some shows as Star Thistle? Like, is this going to become a touring thing as well?
That's a good question. And it was only a couple of weeks ago that I really thought about how artists even get shows, because for the most part, that's eluded me. Although I get the odd invite from places. Like, there was a festival in Wisconsin that invited me to play as Uncle Sinner, and then there was a guy in Belgium that invited me to play. But I think what it is, and this had never occurred to me, was that, like, you get on somebody's tour as their opening act, and the way that you do that is not necessarily by kissing their ass, but rather which wasn't a strategy I tried.
Right.
But I think you get a booking agent, and maybe the booking agent tries to like pair you up with their like main acts if they think that you have promise. So I don't think I'll probably be getting a booking agent. I'm pretty independent.
For sure, yeah.
But I would play shows. I mean, if I had fans, I'd play shows. But like, no one's heard of me in Regina and Calgary and Vancouver, or if they have, like, that's pretty amazing. Because I fly pretty low under the radar. So you can book a venue, but if no one's heard of you, then
you're not going to show up.
Not much point to it. But there's, if it doesn't become a live act thing, that's all right, because recording is its own medium. It's more like painting in that you can layer things and arrange things. And as I've gone on, even with Uncle Sinner, but definitely with Star Thistle, the arrangements have gotten more and more involved. Some people like that, some people like that less, right? Like, there's always going to be some people who like your first album best because that's its most raw, right? Like those are the tracks where I was like barely aware that I was being recorded, and it's just like me and a banjo, or me and a slide guitar, minimal overdubs, and it's more like a live setting. The thing is, like, you release those records, and if you're probably going to listen to them, even if they're your own records, and you start to think about how you could like build on that, and how you can sort of do better. So they don't have to, but they can become less raw, and they become, like with a painting, if you don't like a certain color, you can change it and tweak it. So I think of recording as more like, canvas and oil. A live show is more like ice dancing, right? Where it could be incredibly graceful, but at any moment the person could completely fall on their ass. The possibilities for humiliation in a live show exist, and that's part of what makes it exciting, unless the person is such a consummate professional that you have every confidence that they're going to make every note that they intend to make. And I don't know, I'm less drawn to that. Like, I sort of like watching people who you sort of lean in and you're like, are they going to make it? Oh my God, they're pulling it off.
You're waiting for like the string to fall off in the middle of a solo or something, right? It's imminent.
Like, I have a friend named Aaron in Toronto, and back when I was learning banjo when I was about 19, he would watch my hands, and like, I used to get performance anxiety. That's gotten better with age, right? And just exposure. But he said, like I could see your like hands shaking, and I'm like, he's not going to make the riff, but then he makes the riff. It's like, I can't stop watching. So
it's like the train wreck kind of.
Yeah, I know, but it creates a bit of suspense. And also, when you're live, sometimes you stretch out and you're improvising. I don't ever want to sing something exactly the same as it was sung on the album. I don't understand why anyone would want to hear that, right?
Well, it's boring because you can listen to it at home and it's been produced properly and everything, right? You're not gonna you need the element of danger.
And if people have seen, like, I've done a bunch of free live streams on Instagram, and chances are, like, if I've played a song, I've messed with it, since the time I've recorded it.
Do you think that, I think when we first talked last year, the first thing I asked you is like, where the hell did you come from? Because I think, like you're saying, you're very underground, you're very independent. Do you think that this kind of music you're playing with the Star Thistle project, does it have the potential to open you up to a wider audience? Because what you're doing before was very niche. I mean, there's definitely a fan base for that stuff. But I mean, the stompier, darker, I think called it Death Country, that
Mhm.
that has its own small niche for sure, right? But I mean, you're playing indie folk music. That's a much larger tent of potential listeners. Do you have any hopes that this will kind of not make you famous or anything, but break you into maybe a wider audience than the people who are already listening to you now?
I don't think it will. I mean, it would be, of course, it'd be lovely if that happened.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to, sabotage my own project by saying these things. But so with Uncle Sinner, that's a niche genre, and that's how I managed to get so many streams on Spotify, is just being
Right.
part. Like, if people are looking for a certain sound, there's only so many people who are producing that sound.
And you're one of those guys, yeah.
Yeah. So I over 100,000 streams a year. I do all right on the Spotify.
What do you get for that? Like $1?
I mean, I got about $600.
Okay, that's actually way better than I, because I always assume Spotify pays like next to nothing. But anyway, sorry, go on.
Yeah. Anyway, but indie folk, and specifically, trying to be a good songwriter, is just such an impossibly large arena with so many impossibly talented people. And
Sure.
So you're now competing with literally, with so many more people. And so it's so much harder to get exposed, to get someone to say, oh, this is special enough that I want to write a review about it. It's tricky, and I mean, it could be good. I mean, who knows? But I'm getting on in years, and mostly this was just something that I really wanted to do because these songs are all important to me, and with COVID and the goddamn dystopia, sorry, that we live in.
Yeah.
You never know like how much time you got. So I'm like, well,
Sure.
I better make this album. I don't know how much time I got.
Right. Well, that's I guess a unique reason to put it on record. I don't think I've heard that before. I've had a lot of interviews on here, and people have given me countless reasons why they made an album, but that's a new one. I like that. But it makes sense though, right? I mean, so you have these songs in you. You have presumably the time to put them out now to actually work them when maybe you wouldn't have pre-pandemic, right?
And I've gotten better in terms of learning how to record, learning how to mix. I mean, Dylan helps me with the mixing a little bit, but I do the first go around, and then we sort of tweak from there. And I completely forgot what I was going to say.
It's all right. We can shift topics. So what it's very interesting that you talk about wanting to get people to review it. And as someone who reads lots of music reviews, I definitely agree with you. That's where I hear about a lot of stuff, and that's where I've always heard about a lot of stuff that I want to get into. I mean, there's some bands that are now among my favorites that I first discovered by reading a record review like 25 years ago or whatever. But do you think that that's still the way most people do it? I mean, I realize I'm kind of out of touch with how, the youth listen to music, and I don't know if your stuff isn't necessarily targeted to the youth, but do you know what I mean? Like, right. Is that style of kind of getting known by people interpreting your work to their audience, do you think that's still the way that it happens, or is it now all about these weird algorithms and shit that no human being can understand?
There are certain places where if they review your album, Pitchforks is still pretty powerful. Right. I assume people still read the AV Club and Consequence of Sound and stuff like that. But a lot of it comes from like influential playlisters, which is a new thing, right? These are people who don't have to write anything. They just they're professional taste makers.
Yeah.
And those are people that you can also, spend $1 on Submit Hub and submit your stuff to them. And they usually sort of tell you what genres they're into.
Okay.
So I think there's that, and there's just good old fashioned word of mouth, which is mostly how Uncle Sinner spread. I did get a couple of reviews, and it helped that I was on a label for my first record, because that immediately, at least in 2008, would get you noticed. I don't know that being on a record label now gets
I
you
don't know if it
noticed
even
by
matters
any-
anymore. Yeah, it's
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, if you have any tips, let me know.
No, I don't know. I stopped playing in bands. I stopped playing in bands like 15 years ago. Yeah, no, I got nothing. This is why I talk to other people so they can tell me how to do it. So in case I ever try to start it up again.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I mean, some part of it is you have to be good. You have to be really good to stand out.
Sure.
Oh, that's what I was
Especially
going
now.
to talk.
Especially now.
That's what I was going to talk about. Is that it's like it's the feast of the internet, right? Versus the famine of, you know, pre MP3s, like
Yep.
going to record stores. Like it's so much harder to get popular because anyone can get on Spotify.
Yeah.
Just through like an independent aggregator. An aggregator is someone who will help put your money up on Spotify in exchange for a cut of the profits.
Yeah. Well, and so now you're not competing just with the really good stuff that's in the record store. You're competing with all of that and everyone and their dog who decided to make a record in the same category in their basement, and it could be terrible, but it's all just crowding the scene now.
Yeah. I mean, I try and think about how I learn about artists, and you know, I mean, my brother lives in Australia. He sends me stuff that he thinks I'd be interested in. Like,
Cool.
he got me into the band Big Thief. Adrian Linker is the songwriter. You know, stuff like Iron and Wine. My son gets me into things like there's a songwriter in Colorado named Gregory Alan Isakov. He ended up sort of being an influence on,
Cool.
you know, a number of the songs on the album. So I'm lucky to have people in my life that are enough in tune with the music scene, because I'm not really out there trawling the internet for a great songwriter or anything like that. They just end up at my door, and it's always so nice when you hear something and it puts you in someone else's skin for a little while, and it puts a stamp on an emotional state where you know it was sort of going through you and around you.
Yeah.
You couldn't make it on your own, and a really good song can just sort of freeze time for me or transport me through time. So I mean, I spend a lot of time listening to music these days, especially in the pandemic.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I spent the pandemic living alone in my house, and I mean, I had to put out an album again because I needed something to do over the winter.
Yeah.
So that was another reason to make the album, and of course, like, you know, so that I could go on Witchpolice radio again, because at least once a year I want to be able to see your mad bearded face smiling at me.
You're welcome anytime, man. Yeah, it's good. I'm glad to have you on here again. So what you just said about the you know, what a song can do and the emotional impact it can have. When you have those kind of experiences with a really good song or a really good album, even, are you getting that from more so the lyrics, or is it the combination? Like, can you have a record that has phenomenal lyrics and still feel the same emotions from it if the music sucks? What percentage, I guess, do you need of both sides, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a wordy fellow, and so I mean, I have actually purchased books of poetry in the last year.
I have also done that. Yep.
Yeah. So and I'm not, you know, and I'm not trying to publish books of poetry. I just buy them when someone's really good. There's a poet in Toronto named Eva HD. Okay. She's really good. I heard her poem on that new Charlie Kaufman movie, I'm Thinking of Ending Things.
Okay. Yeah.
The Bone Dog. That's her poem. So lyrics are really important to me, and I'm fairly, I guess, middle of the road in terms of music. Like, I can't handle a lot of dissonance. I mean, I do sometimes. I mean, I I enjoy like Tom Waits' Rain Dogs and
Yeah,
Swordfish Trombones. But you know, if it gets too jazzy, like I sort of just hear the major scale and the blues scale in my head, and I think there's a real art to writing a 3 or 4 chord song that sounds new, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
I mean, a jazz person will say, "Oh, you know, they're all just they think they can predict, you know, where the song is going to go and all that." But it's more about the combination, and there's just endless variations on those 3 or 4 chords or 5 chords if you want
Yeah.
to get really fancy.
Well, that's the punk rock thing, though, right? The 3 chords and the truth. That's all you need for a song, right? Just 3 chords and the
Yeah,
truth. And
yeah. And so I if the music's really good and the words are sort of okay, that's all right for, you know, driving or whatever.
Yeah.
But the stuff that really slays me and that I end up like listening to over and over again to the point where like I'm afraid to listen to it on Spotify because I'm going to think it's going to be judging me for listening to the same song over and over again. Like they're songs that have really what I consider to be strong lyrics. I mean, it's all subjective.
Of course, yeah.
And I tend to like a certain folky sound. That's just
not surprising.
That's what I grew up with. You know, starting with when I was 16 and got into Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen and people like that, Joni Mitchell,
all
Farron.
Very wordy people.
Yeah, Farron from. I mean, she was born in Ontario, but she moved out to BC early on, and she is an incredible songwriter that a lot of people haven't heard of because she was also very, very independent because she was very open about her sexuality in the 70s when nobody was out like that. So her stuff had a big influence on me, even though I can't write a Farron song. I mean, I appreciate the attention to detail that she put in every word, and I try not to have any throwaway lines or forced rhymes in my songs.
How long does it take you to write lyrics? I mean, if you're focusing on that, I mean, you know, I imagine a lot of people churn out lyrics like there's no tomorrow and just here's a song done. I get the feeling that you put a bit more time into that, and it's especially because you've been talking about the process of recording and the amount of work you can do on perfecting it and things like that. Like, are you a perfectionist when it comes to the lyrics fitting in the exact spots they're supposed to fit, and the rhymes being, you know, like do you labor over the words, or is it sort of a finished product once you've got it out of your head and onto a page?
I mean, it's going to depend on the song. Like the oldest song I wrote on a bar napkin while I was like a bartender, that's a song called Hesitation Blues. I mean, I wrote that as early as 96.
Okay.
But that's by far the oldest song. Generally now the process, like some songs, there's only one song on the album where I started with a riff, and that's Green River Ice, where I was just like playing along on the guitar, and then I just realized that could be a song.
Okay.
But in terms of the lyrics, I tend to carry them around. You know, there's a song called Correction Lines, and I in the last verse I say, you know, I guess my grief is now a man, and that was like, that's a line that I thought of when it had been 18 years since my mom had passed.
Okay.
And like I thought of that line 7 years ago, but I only wrote the song 3 years ago. So sometimes I carry, not in a book or anything, but just, you know, things in my head. A lot of the songs I will write, they start out as poems. So the first song, Starting Over, was just a free verse poem. Okay. And then I start to see like little internal rhymes and ways that which I can shift it if I think I can make it into a song. Sometimes I can't make it into a song, but I think generally, so there's a couple that started as poems, and then the ones where I know I'm writing a song, I will kind of sweat over them and tweak them over over the bit, and because this is a best of album, and some of the songs are, most of them are. There's about 4 of them that were written in the last 2 or 3 years, and but some of the older ones, that I wrote in my 30s, for example, if you hear a line enough times, you're eventually going to figure out what's not working in it. Right. And so that gave me kind of an opportunity to make this album as good as it could be, because, there are some fairly classic songs where I just listen to it and I think, yeah, this song is really good, except for this one line. But the performer's kind of stuck singing that line, because that's, unless there are performers who truly don't care and will revise their lyrics, 10 years
Dylan
after the fact.
Yeah.
Exactly. He wrote Tangled Up in Blue in 86, but then sort of reverted back. But Tangled Up in Blue has always been changing.
Right.
So yeah, it was just an opportunity to see what worked and what didn't work. I mean, obviously I've had less time with the more recent ones, so there's, a greater possibility that there's some clunkers in those, but we'll see.
Where can people hear this stuff? I mean, I think that obviously the Uncle Sinner fans know where to find you online, and they've heard those records. But for someone who is new to you in general, or new to this side of you, what's the best way to hear this music?
I just go to Spotify, if you have, or Apple Music, or whatever streaming platform. I mean, that's fine. Having lots of people streaming your music will actually help get shows. Right. If you're the type to download music, then I have a Bandcamp site, and you can it's just pay if you feel like it, right. Sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm doing a limited run of 200 CDs, which is probably about 150 more than I need, but when you put limited on it, and I'm here today on Witchpolice Radio to say there is no world in which I'm going to have any more CDs made. Like, the promise has been made. I didn't make any promises about vinyl. If the album does really well, then I would be delighted to put it out on vinyl.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah.
But vinyl requires a substantial capital investment, and you have to get at least 200 or so records made, and get it remastered for vinyl, because it's remastering for vinyl from my guy is only another $300, so that's no big deal. But it's a lot of money to do, especially if you're not doing like a bulk run of like 1,000 records.
Yeah. So, well, and if you're not touring with it or anything either, right? You don't have the opportunity to sell it at shows and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then you're sending it out in these big like cardboard mailers that I guess that's recyclable and all that, but
there's that, yeah, for sure.
Just seems like a pain in the ass. I don't know where you get the cardboard things.
I don't know either. It's a good question, actually. I should get some record company person on here and just like, where do you get those cardboard things? What's
I have musician friends I could ask, I suppose. But if it comes to that, if the album becomes popular, then I will look into vinyl, because people always ask about vinyl.
Sure.
They just don't necessarily know the logistics of the thousands of dollars that takes. I mean, and I could do that. I think it would be sort of sad to be sitting on 200 unsold records. I mean, it's the CDs are a limited run of 200, but I only had 100 made. Like, chances are I won't have to ever get that high. I'm giving away my secrets here, aren't I?
You are.
I've probably given up way too much, and so now all the people who are like going to be lured in by the limited edition. I'll tell you what I'll do though.
You've ruined
it. With every CD, I will include a non-fungible token. Right, so like everyone will get like a hand-drawn like Star Thistle self-portrait, or a picture of a goat, or a picture of a smoking chicken, or something.
And those will of course be extremely valuable at some point in the future. Once
I mean, you have to assume those.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be the next Doge coin. Doge, is it Doge? I don't know.
I don't even know. Yeah, I think it's Doge. Yeah. All right.